Daniel's broken voice echoed through the kitchen of the Millionaire mansion as Victoria Whitmore raised her hand again against the 12-year-old boy. The sound of the slap echoed like thunder in the afternoon silence. "How many times do I have to tell you not to touch anything in this house, you brat?" Victoria spat the words venomously, her icy blue eyes fixed on the boy who was trying to protect his face with his skinny arms. "Your mother may clean up our mess, but that doesn't give you the right to breathe the same air as us." Daniel Santos never imagined that accompanying his mother to work during school holidays would become his worst nightmare. While Lucia Santos spent her days cleaning every corner of that 3-story mansion, her son hid in the corners trying to become invisible. But for Victoria, the wife of tech billionaire Richard Whitmore, the boy's mere presence was a personal offense. "I just wanted water," whispered Daniel, still protecting his face. The red mark of Victoria's fingers glowed on his dark cheek like a tattoo of humiliation. "Water?" Victoria laughed cruelly. "There's a hose in the backyard. That's the appropriate place for people like you to cool off." What Victoria didn't know was that every poisonous word, every gesture of contempt was being absorbed by someone who was developing a photographic memory for injustice. Daniel wasn't just another child suffering in silence. There was something in his eyes that shone with precocious intelligence, as if he were already mentally filing away every detail of those moments. Lucia appeared at the kitchen door at that moment, her eyes immediately taking in the scene. The mark on her son's face, Victoria's aggressive posture, the tension in the air, thick as smoke. "Daniel, go get my cleaning supplies from the car," Lucia said with a forced calm that only mothers who have faced hell can maintain. Her gaze briefly met her son's, conveying a silent message. "Hang in there. Everything will change." "Your maid needs to keep this little problem out of my sight," Victoria declared, smoothing her perfectly brushed blonde hair. "Richard is coming home from his trip today, and I don't want him to see this unpleasant situation in our home." As Daniel walked toward the door, something in his posture caught attention. There was no defeat in his steps. His shoulders remained straight, like someone carrying secrets too powerful to be revealed before the right time. Victoria watched the boy leave and felt an inexplicable chill. There was something in those young eyes that didn't match submission, as if he were waiting for something. Over the next 3 days, Victoria turned Daniel's life into a meticulously planned hell. Each morning brought a new humiliation, as if she were testing exactly how far she could push the boy before he broke completely. "Your mother forgot to clean the master suite bathroom properly yesterday," Victoria declared, holding a dirty rag. "You're going to finish her work with your tongue if necessary." Daniel remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the Italian marble floor. But something interesting was happening behind that apparent submission. He was memorizing every word, every gesture, every facial expression of contempt, like a silent computer processing crucial data for a future moment. Victoria interpreted the silence as total victory. "Ah, now you understand your place," she laughed with cruel satisfaction. "Good. Maybe we can live together in harmony while your husband is away." What she didn't know was that Daniel Santos carried in his blood something that generations of humiliation had never been able to erase. Lucia had raised her son by telling him stories about his great-grandfather, a man who rose from slave to prosperous merchant, using only his intelligence and a strategic patience that confused his enemies. "Observe everything, remember everything, use everything at the right time," was the family mantra that Daniel repeated mentally with each new attack. "Do you know what bothers me most about you?" Victoria continued, pouring herself French champagne while Daniel scrubbed the floor at her feet in his worn sneakers. "It's that silent arrogance, as if you were keeping important secrets when in fact you're nothing but nothing." Daniel stopped scrubbing for a second, just a second, and Victoria caught the movement. "Oh, did I touch a nerve?" She bent down, bringing her face close to the boy's. "Let me explain your reality, kid. You're the son of a cleaning lady. Your best future is to follow in your mother's footsteps. This house, these beautiful things, this world, it will never be yours. Accept that, and your life will be easier." But there was something in Daniel's eyes that didn't match acceptance. It was like watching a young predator studying hunting patterns, cataloging weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment. Victoria noticed that strange gleam and felt an inexplicable discomfort. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Her voice came out louder than she intended. "I'm not looking at you at all, ma'am," Daniel replied with such perfect courtesy that it sounded almost ironic. At that moment, Lucia appeared carrying cleaning supplies. Her eyes immediately picked up on the tension in the air and her son's humiliating position on the floor. "Daniel, go organize my things in the car," she said with forced naturalness. But before he left, she added something seemingly innocent. "And don't forget to check that app we installed on your phone yesterday, the one that automatically records audio." Victoria was too busy enjoying her champagne to notice the significance of that sentence, or the way Daniel nodded almost imperceptibly before leaving. During the boy's absence, Victoria vented to Lucia about how she was educating the boy. "I hope you understand that I'm doing you both a favor. This boy needs to learn early on what his place is in the world. I'm teaching him reality, not cruelty." "Of course, ma'am," Lucia replied, continuing to clean. But inside, she smiled. Victoria had no idea that every word was being recorded by the cell phone Daniel was discreetly carrying in his pocket. When Richard Whitmore finally returned from his business trip, he found an impeccably clean house and a seemingly radiant wife. "How have you been, dear?" he asked, adjusting his tie in front of the hall mirror. "Perfect," Victoria lied with ease. "Lucia is doing an exceptional job, and her son, well, let's just say he's learning good manners." Richard just nodded absently, already thinking about the emails he needed to answer. Men like him built digital empires, but rarely paid attention to the human dramas happening under their own roofs. What none of them noticed was Daniel watching from the kitchen window, his fingers sliding across his cell phone screen. 3 days of recordings, over 20 discrete photos, and an increasingly clear understanding that Victoria Whitmore had chosen the wrong adversary. Each new humiliation only fueled something inside him that grew silently. Not destructive anger, but a cold, calculating determination that would make his ancestors proud. Victoria thought she was breaking a boy, but in fact, she was forging something far more dangerous, a young man who understood the power of strategic patience. In the second week, when Victoria forced him to clean the bathroom with his bare hands because people like him need to know how to use their hands for what they were born to do, Daniel not only obeyed, he discreetly photographed the red marks the chemicals left on his skin. Each image was automatically sent to a shared folder that his mother accessed religiously. "Do you know what your problem is?" Victoria declared during one of her monologues of superiority, sipping her imported wine while Daniel organized the pantry. "You think you deserve the same things as people who have actually worked to achieve them. My husband built a digital empire. I married excellence. And you? Well, you clean up after excellence." What Victoria didn't know was that every poisonous word was being broadcast live to someone very specific. Dr. Marcus Williams, a lawyer specializing in civil rights and racial discrimination cases, had been discreetly contacted by Lucia Santos 3 days earlier. The renowned jurist, who had bankrupted billion-dollar corporations for discriminatory practices, now listened with fascination to the audio recordings in real time through an app that Daniel carried with him at all times. "This woman is building her own lawsuit word by word," Dr. Williams commented to his assistant as he reviewed the recordings. "In my 20-year career, I've rarely seen such compelling evidence of abuse based on racial prejudice. She not only confesses to the acts, she justifies them with clear supremacist ideology." Meanwhile, at the mansion, Daniel began to show small signs that he was not the broken boy Victoria imagined she had raised. When she sent him to carry heavy boxes from the garage, he not only completed the task, he organized everything with an efficiency that impressed even Richard when he came home. "The boy has organizational potential," Richard commented absently, looking at the impeccably tidy garage. "Maybe we should consider—" "Consider what?" Victoria interrupted sharply. "Richard, you can't be serious. It's just basic work. Any domesticated animal can organize boxes." But Richard had noticed something else. The way Daniel answered questions, his upright posture, even during humiliations, his eyes that always seemed to be calculating something. There was an intelligence there that contrasted dramatically with the picture of inferiority that Victoria constantly painted. Daniel, for his part, began to use Richard's growing perception to his advantage. Discreetly, he accidentally left some programming books he had borrowed from the library near places where he knew the billionaire would pass by. When Richard casually asked about the books, Daniel demonstrated genuine knowledge of algorithms and software development that completely surprised the businessman. "Where did you learn about machine learning?" Richard asked, leafing through a book on artificial intelligence that Daniel was reading during his break. "YouTube, sir, and some free online courses," Daniel replied with genuine humility, but maintaining direct eye contact, something that men like Richard instinctively respected. Victoria watched this interaction with growing fury. Her perfectly hierarchical world was being threatened by a boy who refused to accept the role she had assigned him. This led her to dramatically intensify her humiliation tactics. She forced Daniel to eat the leftovers left on her plate after dinner. "Wasted food is food that people like you don't deserve," she declared, photographing the moment with her cell phone. "I'm going to show my husband how I'm teaching you gratitude and humility." What Victoria didn't realize was that Daniel had memorized the times she used her cell phone, where she kept the key to Richard's office, and especially when she made her daily calls to her friends at the social club. During these conversations, Victoria became even more cruel and explicit about her racist views. "Honey, you have no idea what it's like to have to live with this situation," she confessed to her friend Patricia during one of these calls. Unaware that Daniel was downstairs with recording equipment that Dr. Williams had provided. "They think that because they clean our house, they have the right to breathe the same air as us. I'm correcting that illusion day after day." Dr. Williams was building a case that went far beyond child abuse. The recordings revealed a systematic pattern of racial discrimination, humiliation based on social class, and most importantly, a supremacist ideology that she freely expressed when she thought she was talking only to her social peers. "We have enough material for criminal and civil lawsuits," Dr. Williams explained to Lucia during a secret meeting in a cafe far from the mansion. "Child abuse, racial discrimination, creation of a hostile environment, and possibly even hate crimes. But I want more. I want the full context that will allow us not only to punish this woman, but to set precedents that will protect other families." It was then that Daniel suggested something that surprised even the experienced lawyer. What if she confessed everything in front of important people? What if we could get her to show exactly who she is in front of people who really matter? Dr. Williams smiled slowly. "Go on." "My mother found out that they are throwing a gala for important investors next week. Victoria will want to use me as an example of how she educates people in our position. What if we turn that party into the stage for her own downfall?" The plan Daniel was proposing was too audacious for any 12-year-old, unless the child had spent weeks studying his tormentor's every move, every weakness, every moment of vulnerability. Victoria had created a far more dangerous adversary than she ever imagined, someone who combined strategic intelligence with a personal motivation fueled by weeks of injustice. While Victoria continued to believe she was breaking Daniel's spirit, she was actually providing him with all the ammunition he needed for her own destruction. Every new humiliation was documented. Every racist comment was recorded. Every act of cruelty was turned into legal evidence that could put her behind bars. The Visionary Investors Gala took place on a rainy Friday, transforming the Whitmore mansion into a gilded stage of power and influence. 50 of the country's wealthiest business people circulated through the immaculate halls, sipping champagne while discussing billion-dollar mergers as if they were commenting on the weather. Victoria was in her element, dressed in French silk, jewelry inherited from her mother-in-law, and that perfectly rehearsed smile she used to impress the social elite. She had planned every detail of the evening, including the moment when she would demonstrate how she properly educated people of Daniel's position. "Richard, dear," she whispered to her husband as the last guests arrived, "today you will see how I keep our household running with excellence. I'm sure our investors will appreciate our domestic discipline." Richard just nodded distractedly, his mind focused on the presentation on artificial intelligence he would be giving in an hour. What Richard didn't know was that Dr. Marcus Williams had arrived discreetly 20 minutes earlier, accompanied by 2 plainclothes detectives and an investigative journalist from the Washington Post. They all carried recording equipment synchronized with Daniel's cell phone, turning the party into a real-time justice operation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria announced with theatrical elegance, tapping delicately on a crystal glass, "I would like to share with you an example of what I believe to be proper homeschooling." Daniel was called to the center of the main hall, surrounded by dozens of curious glances. Victoria had rehearsed this moment for days, planning to humiliate him publicly to demonstrate her control over people of that position in front of the social elite she so admired. "This young man," she began with that poisonous sweetness she had perfected over the years, "has been learning about gratitude and humility in our home. We firmly believe that people of certain backgrounds need to understand their place in the world from an early age." An uncomfortable murmur ran through some of the guests, but most remained politely silent, waiting for the show to unfold. "Daniel," Victoria continued, her voice taking on that cruel tone Daniel knew so well, "why don't you tell our distinguished guests about the important lessons you've been learning here?" It was then that Daniel did something no one expected. Instead of bowing his head submissively, he looked directly at Victoria and said, "With pleasure, ma'am. But first, I would like to ask if you are sure you want me to tell them everything I've learned here." Victoria laughed dismissively. "Of course, dear. Tell them everything." "Very well." Daniel took a deep breath and with a calmness that impressed even Dr. Williams, began, "I have learned that you consider people like me inferior because of the color of our skin. I learned that you believe we should use garden hoses instead of cups to drink water. And I learned that you like to photograph moments of humiliation to show your friends how you educate black children." The silence in the room became heavy as lead. Victoria instantly turned pale, realizing she had completely lost control of the situation. "Daniel, stop this," she began, but the boy continued relentlessly. "I also learned that you force me to eat leftovers from your plates while calling me a domesticated animal. And that you tell your friends that people like us don't deserve to breathe the same air as you." Richard Whitmore, who had been distracted checking emails, suddenly looked up. These were not the words of a child making up lies. There was a disturbing specificity that only comes from real experience. "That's a lie," Victoria shouted, her veneer of elegance completely disappearing. "This boy is making it up." Dr. Williams emerged from the crowd, tablet in hand. "Then perhaps you can explain this." Victoria's voice echoed through the mansion's sound system. "They think that because they clean our house, they have the right to breathe the same air as us. I am correcting that illusion day after day." 50 shocked faces turned to Victoria, who was now visibly shaking. The recording continued, revealing every racist comment, every cruel description of the educational methods she applied, every sadistic laugh shared with her friends from the social club. "Richard," Victoria's recorded voice continued, "you have no idea what it's like to have to live with this situation. They think that because they clean our house, they have the right to breathe the same air as us." Richard Whitmore stood up slowly, his face going through all the stages of shock. "Victoria," his voice was almost a whisper, "tell me that's not your voice." But Dr. Williams was already playing the videos on the 85-inch screen Richard used for corporate presentations. Everyone could now see Victoria forcing Daniel to kneel, hitting him, dumping food on the floor, and ordering him to eat like an animal. "My God," murmured Patricia Ashford, heir to one of the country's largest family fortunes. "She's torturing a child." "This is a hate crime," declared James Morrison, CEO of a social technology company. "This is exactly the kind of person our industry is fighting to eliminate." Victoria desperately tried to control the situation. "You don't understand. It was necessary discipline. These people need to learn." "These people," Richard repeated, his voice laden with growing fury. "These people, Victoria. What the hell has happened to you?" Dr. Williams took another step forward. "Ms. Whitmore, I am Marcus Williams, a civil rights attorney. I have documentation here of 3 weeks of systematic abuse, racial discrimination, and intentional creation of a hostile environment. I also have 2 detectives here to arrest you." The word arrest echoed through the room like a bomb. Guests began to instinctively move away from Victoria as if she were radioactive. "Arrest?" Victoria stammered. "You can't. I'm Victoria Whitmore. My husband is Richard Whitmore. You know who we are." "We know exactly who you are," replied Detective Rodriguez, emerging discreetly from the crowd with handcuffs in hand. "And that's exactly why this arrest will have national repercussions." Richard stood motionless, processing the fact that his wife had systematically tortured a child in their own home for weeks. "Victoria," he said slowly, You did this in our home to a child. Richard, you have to help me, Victoria pleaded, her veneer of superiority completely shattered. You're my husband. You have to— I have to nothing, Richard interrupted with a coldness that surprised even himself. I don't know the woman standing before me. The woman I married would never do this to a child. Daniel, who had remained calm throughout the entire exposure, finally spoke. Mr. Whitmore, you are a good man. You have always been kind to me. Your wife did these things because she thought you would never find out. She bet on your absence and my supposed inability to defend myself. Richard knelt in front of Daniel, tears in his eyes. Forgive me, he whispered. Forgive me for not seeing, for not protecting you. I have forgiven you, sir, but she must face the consequences. As Victoria was led away in handcuffs by the detectives, still screaming about family connections and empty legal threats, something extraordinary happened. The 50 most powerful businessmen in the country began to applaud Daniel. It wasn't polite or politically correct applause. It was genuine recognition of someone who had faced injustice with a dignity and intelligence that few adults could maintain. As the sirens faded away, taking Victoria to a future very different from the privilege she had always known, one question remained in the air. Could one night of justice rewrite not only the fate of a family, but also the conscience of an elite that rarely paid attention to the human consequences of its own silence? 6 months after the party that changed everything, Victoria Whitmore discovered that falling from a pedestal can be higher and more painful than anyone imagined. The former socialite was now serving a 2-year sentence for child abuse and hate crimes in a state penitentiary where her former social connections were worth less than used toilet paper. Her former friends from the social club had completely erased her. Photos on social media were deleted, invitations canceled, numbers blocked. Like a celebrity who had fallen from grace, Victoria discovered that privilege without character is just a temporary illusion maintained by the complicit silence of those who prefer not to see. Meanwhile, Daniel Santos became a national symbol of intelligent resistance against prejudice. The Richard Whitmore Foundation, created specifically for the education of vulnerable youth, named him as its first full scholarship recipient for technology studies. At age 13, Daniel had already developed 3 apps that helped other children safely report abuse. I never thought my worst experience would become my greatest strength, Daniel said during an interview on a national television program. Victoria tried to break me, but she ended up teaching me that justice is not revenge. It's turning pain into purpose. Richard Whitmore underwent his own radical transformation. His divorce from Victoria was just the beginning of a complete overhaul of values he didn't even know he had lost along the way. I built a technology empire, but I almost lost my humanity, he admitted publicly. Daniel taught me that true success is measured by the positive impact we have, not just the numbers in the bank. Dr. Marcus Williams used the case as a legal precedent to pass stricter federal legislation against domestic hate crimes. Daniel proved that courage has no age, race, or social class, he declared in his speeches. It only has character. Lucia Santos never had to clean other people's houses again. With the compensation from the lawsuit and the support of the foundation, she opened a cleaning service company that now employs dozens of families in the community, offering decent wages and full benefits. Victoria tried to appeal the sentence several times, claiming that her actions were misinterpreted and that she was the victim of a racial conspiracy. But each appeal only reinforced the public perception that some people would rather blame the whole world than admit their own mistakes. On the first anniversary of the fateful party, Daniel returned to the mansion, not as a victim, but as the guest of honor at a charity event. Richard had turned the property into an educational center for underprivileged youth, and Daniel cut the inaugural ribbon. A year ago, this house represented everything I couldn't have, Daniel told the gathered crowd. Today, it represents everything we can achieve when we turn obstacles into opportunities. The real irony is that Victoria, in trying to teach Daniel about his place in the world, ended up discovering exactly what hers was: irrelevant. While she languished in prison, brooding over her resentments, Daniel was building bridges between worlds she had always wanted to keep separate. Daniel Santos's story proves that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt us. It's building something greater than our enemies could ever imagine, Victoria tried to break a boy and ended up forging a leader, demonstrating that courage, intelligence, and strategic patience can overcome even the most entrenched systems of privilege and prejudice.